Time to dig up the main ideas. I'm Sparky, and we're about to fetch a quick summary of Secrets of the Greenbelt, exploring Belize's broadleaf ecosystems.
To understand the natural identity of Belize, you first have to look at its color. If you were to view a map of the country's mainland, the most striking feature is an overwhelming sea of green that stretches from the northern border down to the deepest parts of the south. This isn't just a bit of local scenery, it is the dominant terrestrial ecosystem that defines the nation. Approximately 60% of Belize's mainland surface is covered by what scientists call tropical and subtropical broadleaf forests.
This high percentage is a rarity in a world where many other countries have seen their natural landscapes turned brown or fragmented due to development. In Belize, however, this greenbelt remains the heart of the environment, covering the Maya Mountains, the expansive areas around Rio Bravo, and the dense jungles of the Orange Walk and Toledo districts. These broadleaf forests are not a single uniform block of wood and leaves. Instead, they are distributed across the country in three primary categories based on their elevation and location: lowland, submontane, and montane broadleaf forests.
Each of these zones plays a specific role in the country's ecology, but they all share the fundamental characteristics that earn them their name. As the name suggests, these ecosystems are dominated by trees with broadleaves rather than needles. They thrive in a specific set of conditions: warm temperatures that generally range between 70 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and heavy annual rainfall that keeps the system hydrated and productive. When you step into these forests, you are entering one of the most complex habitats on Earth. These environments are defined by a stratified structure, meaning they grow in distinct vertical layers, from the dark forest floor up to the sun-drenched canopy. This stratification creates a high degree of biodiversity and complex interspecies relationships, where plants and animals are deeply interdependent. Geographically, Belize sits in a privileged position. These types of forests typically occur in a broad green belt around the equator, extending about 20 degrees north and south. Because Belize falls within this subtropical zone, it serves as a vital sanctuary for species that require consistent warmth and moisture. Originally, these forests covered about 12% of the Earth's surface, but global deforestation has reduced that number to less than 7%. This makes Belize's 60% coverage even more significant on a global scale. It is a massive storehouse of life that continues to thrive because of the unique topographic and climatic conditions found here, providing a foundation for the incredible diversity of flora and fauna we see today. Understanding this distribution is the first step in unlocking the secrets of the broadleaf ecosystem and recognizing why its protection is so essential to the health of the planet. Broadleaf forests are characterized by several defining features that set them apart from other terrestrial ecosystems. To understand this vibrant green belt, we first look at the tree species themselves. As the name suggests, these forests are dominated by trees with wide, flat leaves rather than needles. These trees thrive in a specific environment, typically found in a broad band around the Earth's equator, extending about 20 degrees north and south. In Belize, this ecosystem flourishes because of the warm subtropical climate. Temperatures here generally range from 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 21 to 32 degrees Celsius, creating a consistent heat that drives rapid biological activity. However, if you were to spend a night in the heart of the forest, you would notice a refreshing drop into the 60s, a shift that is vital for the local ecology and makes the environment surprisingly comfortable. A core characteristic of the broadleaf forest is its remarkable stratified structure. You can imagine the forest as a complex, multi-story building where life is organized into distinct vertical layers.
At the very top, we find the emergent trees. These are the giants, such as the mahogany or the sacred ceiba, which can reach heights of over 200 feet. Their branches protrude far above the rest of the forest, catching the full force of the wind and sun, which they use for pollination and seed dispersal. Below these giants lies the true canopy, which is often divided into upper and lower sections. The canopy is essentially a massive, interconnected roof of vegetation. The branches of these trees are so tightly interwoven, often tied together by woody vines called lianas and air plants known as epiphytes,
that they form a dense shield over the land. This structure is incredibly functional. It softens the impact of heavy tropical rains, preventing the water from pounding directly into the earth and washing away the nutrient-poor soil. It also acts as a natural insulator, trapping moisture and maintaining a relatively constant temperature and high humidity for the creatures living below. Moving down from the canopy, we encounter the understory, a shaded realm of smaller trees, palms, and shrubs that have adapted to life with limited sunlight. Finally, we reach the forest floor. Because the canopy is so thick that it blocks most sun penetration, the floor is often clear of dense brush but rich in decomposing organic matter. This vertical organization is exactly what allows broadleaf forests to support such immense biodiversity. Each layer offers a unique habitat, from the sun-drenched emergent tops to the dark, damp floor, creating a stable environment where a huge portion of the planet's species can flourish. Understanding this architecture is the first step in appreciating the secrets of the Belizean wilderness. When we look at a map of the world, we see a vibrant green ribbon wrapping around the center of our planet. These tropical and subtropical broadleaf forests traditionally form a broad belt around the equator, extending roughly 20 degrees north and south. This green belt is the lifeblood of our global ecosystem, yet its footprint is shrinking at an alarming rate. Originally, these forests covered about 12% of the Earth's surface. Today, that cover has been drastically reduced to less than 7%, with some estimates suggesting it may have fallen as low as 5%. This rapid decline is primarily driven by deforestation and the pressures of an exploding human population. In Belize, we are fortunate that 60% of the mainland remains under this broadleaf cover, but understanding the fragility of this global resource is essential to its protection. A common misconception is that every lush green forest in the tropics is a true rainforest. In reality, scientists use very specific rainfall thresholds to categorize these ecosystems. To be classified as a true tropical rainforest, an area must receive more than 150 inches, or 380 centimeters, of rain every single year. In these unique environments, a dry season is practically non-existent. The moisture is so consistent that the cycle of growth and decomposition never pauses. When we look at the geography of Belize, it is a surprise to many that only the Toledo district in the far south actually meets this strict criteria for a true tropical rainforest. Here, the heavy rains create a level of humidity and biological activity that is distinct from the rest of the country. The majority of Belize's broadleaf ecosystems fall into other categories, such as moist or dry broadleaf forests. These areas still receive significant precipitation, usually 60 inches or 150 centimeters or more per year, but they experience more defined seasonal changes. Unlike the true rainforests of the south, these forests may have a distinct dry season, where the lack of rain influences the behavior of the plants and animals. Even though they may not meet the 380 centimeter threshold, they are still powerhouses of biodiversity. The distinction is important because it tells us how the ecosystem manages water and nutrients. In a true rainforest, the constant downpour requires plants to be even more specialized in how they anchor themselves and how they capture nutrients before the rain washes them away. By recognizing these rainfall thresholds, we gain a deeper appreciation for the variety within Belize's greenbelt, moving beyond a one-size-fits-all label to see the complex climatic forces that shape the jungle. You might look at the lush, towering greenery of the Belizean broadleaf forest and assume the ground beneath it is a volcanic goldmine of nutrients. In reality, the situation is quite the opposite. The soils here are often dominated by limestone or calcium carbonate and are remarkably shallow and porous. Despite the explosion of life above ground, the soil itself is fundamentally nutrient poor. This creates a high-stakes environment where every scrap of organic matter is precious. Because the soil is so thin, nutrients are easily washed away or leached out by the heavy tropical rains, meaning the forest cannot afford to store its wealth in the earth like a temperate forest might. This leads to a fascinating dynamic where over 90% of all available nutrients are concentrated in just the top 2 inches of the soil. Below that thin 5-centimeter margin, there is very little to support life. This narrow window means that plants must be incredibly efficient and fast at nutrient collection. If a tree is not quick enough to grab the minerals released from a fallen leaf or a rotting branch, those nutrients will be lost to the deeper, unproductive layers of the earth or carried away by runoff. This urgency has shaped the very architecture of the forest floor, forcing plants to adapt in ways that prioritize speed and surface area over depth. The real heroes in this race for survival are the mycorrhizal fungi. These specialized fungi form a mutualistic partnership, or symbiosis, with the roots of the great trees. Instead of the trees working alone, they host these fungi in their root systems to act as a biological recycling team. These mycorrhizal associates specialize in breaking down forest litter, which is the collection of twigs, leaves, and organic debris that constantly falls to the ground. By rapidly decomposing this non-living matter, the fungi release nutrients and channel them directly back into the living plants. It is a perfect exchange. The fungi receive energy in the form of sugars from the tree, and the tree receives a high-speed delivery of essential minerals. This relationship is so effective that the bulk of the ecosystem's energy is actually bound up within living organisms rather than sitting in the ground. This reliance on the surface layer explains why you rarely see deep taproots in these broadleaf forests. Instead, the roots of these giants spread horizontally over the forest floor for incredible distances. They stay close to the top 2 inches, where the fungi are hard at work and the nutrients are most accessible. This creates a literal web of life, where the roots of different trees entangle and entwine with one another. While this shallow growth makes for tricky footing, it provides the trees with essential stability. By anchoring to one another and spreading their weight across the surface, they remain standing even in thin soil. In these Belizean ecosystems, survival is not about reaching deep into the earth. It is about staying connected to the surface and the fungal partners that keep the cycle of life moving. In the deep shade of Belize's broadleaf forests, change is the only constant. While the ecosystem might appear static to a casual observer, it is actually a theater of perpetual renewal, driven by a process called forest succession. This is the orderly and predictable appearance of different life forms as environmental conditions change over time. It is how the forest heals itself after a disturbance, transforming a scar on the landscape back into a lush, multi-layered canopy. The story of succession often begins with a single event, the opening of a light gap. In a mature forest, the canopy is so dense that very little sunlight reaches the ground. However, when a massive tree falls due to old age, or when larger areas are cleared by fire, floods, hurricanes, or even temporary agriculture, a window to the sky opens. This sudden influx of light acts as a biological trigger. Beneath the layers of forest litter on the floor lies a natural seed bank, where the seeds of various plants have been lying dormant for years, sometimes even decades. These seeds are like a biological memory of the forest, waiting for the right conditions to strike. Once the sunlight hits the soil, it sparks a period of rapid germination and fierce competition. The first plants to claim the space are usually fast-growing grasses, weeds, and shrubs. In Belize, this early stage of regeneration, occurring within the first 2 to 5 years, is locally known as guamil or wamil. These pioneer species are specialists in living in open, sunny spaces. They grow quickly to stabilize the soil, but their reign is relatively short-lived. As they grow, they begin to shade the ground, creating a cooler environment that allows the next wave of plants, young trees, to take root. Over time, these trees outcompete the shrubs, eventually growing tall enough to close the gap in the canopy once again. This leads to a distinction between 2 types of forest. Primary forest refers to land that has never been touched or cut by human hands, remaining in its original, ancient state. Secondary forest is the result of regeneration after the land has been cleared. It is a common misconception that all of Belize's green space is primary forest. In reality, due to a long history of logging and the fact that the human population during the time of the classic Maya was significantly higher than it is today, most of the forests we see are actually secondary. These ecosystems have spent centuries recovering, showing just how powerful and effective natural succession is at restoring the greenbelt. Whether the cause is a natural hurricane or human activity, the forest's ability to transition from a light gap to a mature secondary forest is what ensures its survival and long-term health. Broadleaf forests act as far more than just a collection of trees. They serve as a massive living infrastructure that provides essential services for the entire planet. One of their most immediate roles is climate control. Because of the sheer density of the vegetation, these forests act as a natural regulator for the local environment. When you step under the canopy, you immediately notice a shift in the atmosphere. The forest maintains a relatively constant temperature, light level, and humidity. This stable microclimate is what allows such a vast array of species to flourish and adapt over thousands of years. Without this green shield, the land would be subject to local drying and warming trends. In fact, we have seen that when these forests are destroyed, the surrounding areas experience a significant rise in temperature and a decrease in moisture, making the land much less hospitable for both wildlife and agriculture. This leads directly into another critical service: moisture filtration and water management. In a tropical environment like Belize, rainfall can be incredibly intense. Without the broadleaf canopy, these heavy rains would pound directly into the earth, causing massive soil erosion and washing away the thin, nutrient-rich topsoil that the ecosystem depends on. Instead, the stratified layers of the forest act as a giant sponge and a series of baffles. The leaves of the emergent trees and the thick canopy layers soften the impact of the rain, allowing water to trickle down slowly to the forest floor. This process doesn't just prevent erosion, it also filters the water as it moves into the ground and reduces moisture loss from evaporation. By keeping the ground shaded and cool, the forest ensures that moisture stays within the cycle rather than being lost to the atmosphere too quickly. Perhaps the most globally significant service provided by these forests is their ability to mitigate the greenhouse effect through the absorption of carbon dioxide. We know that human industry and the burning of fossil fuels release massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which acts like the glass of a greenhouse, trapping heat and causing global temperatures to rise. Broadleaf forests are our greatest allies in fighting this trend. During photosynthesis, trees pull carbon dioxide from the air and use it as fuel to grow, effectively locking that carbon away in their trunks, leaves, and roots. This makes the forest a massive storehouse, or carbon sink. When we protect these forests, we are keeping that carbon out of the atmosphere. Conversely, when forests are cleared or burned, that stored carbon is released back into the air, further damaging the atmosphere and contributing to more extreme weather patterns, such as the increased frequency of El Niño events and the melting of polar ice. By maintaining Belize's 60% forest cover, we aren't just preserving local beauty, we are maintaining a vital defense against global climate change. Looking up into the canopy of Belize's broadleaf forest is like staring at a multi-storied green metropolis. The architecture of this ecosystem is organized into distinct layers, starting with the emergent giants. These are the titans of the forest, trees like the ceiba, mahogany, and guanacaste, which tower over 60 meters or 200 feet into the air. Because they rise so far above the rest of the vegetation, their branches deal with higher light levels and stronger winds. Consequently, many emergents have evolved small, tough, and shiny leaves to withstand these conditions. Seed dispersal for these giants is often handled by the wind, which carries their offspring across the forest ceiling. Among these giants, the ceiba, or silk cotton tree, holds a special place in Belizean culture. With its pale, smooth trunk and massive branches, the ancient Maya considered it a sacred bridge between the heavens and the earth. Its silky fibers were used for stuffing, and its oil for soap. Nearby, you might find the mahogany, recognizable by its dark, rough bark and asymmetrical leaflets. For centuries, loggers known as baymen would search the horizon for the reddish hue of mahogany leaves during the dry season to locate these valuable timber trees. Moving just below these titans, we find the upper and lower canopies, a dense, interconnected layer of trees ranging from 75 to over 200 feet in height. This is where you find species like the ramon, or breadnut tree, whose seeds were a vital food source for the Maya. The lower canopy also hosts the gumbo limbo, easily identified by its peeling red bark. In a fascinating display of natural medicine, the gumbo limbo serves as a direct antidote to the black poisonwood tree, and the two species are frequently found growing near each other. Living among these branches is an entire world of air plants, known as epiphytes. Unlike most plants, epiphytes don't need their roots in the soil to survive. Instead, they perch on the trunks and branches of larger trees to reach the sunlight. Most are commensals, meaning they live on the host tree without harming it. They have developed incredible adaptations for this high-altitude lifestyle, such as waxy leaf coatings to prevent water loss and specialized bulbs at their base to store moisture during the dry season. Bromeliads, which are relatives of the pineapple, even grow in a rosette shape that acts as a natural tank, trapping rainwater and falling debris to create a miniature hanging compost pile. However, not every air dweller is a friendly neighbor. The strangling fig, or matapalo, starts as a simple epiphyte, but eventually sends feeder roots down to the soil. Once it taps into the ground's nutrients, it grows aggressively, eventually surrounding and killing its host tree. From the sacred height of the ceiba to the delicate orchids and mosses clinging to the bark, the flora of the canopy demonstrates the incredible vertical complexity and interdependence of Belize's broadleaf forests. While plants account for over 99% of the biomass in Belize's broadleaf forests, the remaining fraction, represented by animals, is disproportionately vital to the ecosystem's survival. These forests are bustling, three-dimensional cities where every resident, from the canopy to the floor, has a specific job. In the high reaches of the canopy, you will find a vertical stratification of life. Species like the red-eyed tree frog spend their entire existence far above the ground, using water trapped in bromeliad rosettes to lay their eggs. Mammals like the kinkajou and the Central American spider monkey navigate the treetops, while the Mexican black howler monkey uses a specialized hyoid bone to send its territorial calls echoing for over a mile. Birds are equally layered. While the keel-billed toucan and scarlet macaw occupy the upper branches, antbirds and wood creepers stick to the lower levels, often following swarms of army ants to snatch up insects flushed out by the moving colony. On the forest floor, life is smaller but no less industrious. Termites and woodlice serve as the recycling team, breaking down tough cellulose, while the Baird's tapir, Belize's national animal, navigates the undergrowth near water sources. Predators like the jaguar and the smaller arboreal margay maintain the balance of these populations. However, the most profound impact animals have is through the services they provide to the plants that house them. Because plants are rooted, they rely on animals for reproduction and expansion. Pollination is a primary service. In the dense, humid forest where wind is often blocked, plants use nectar as a form of bribery to attract bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and bats. Some plants even use deceit, evolving flowers that mimic the appearance of a female insect to trick males into carrying pollen from one blossom to another. Once pollination is successful, the next challenge is seed distribution. It is not ideal for a seedling to grow directly under its parent, where it must compete for limited light and nutrients. To solve this, plants offer fruit as a reward. When a monkey, parrot, or a gibnut, famously known as the royal rat, eats fruit, they transport the seeds away from the parent plant, eventually excreting them in a new location along with a small amount of fertilizer. Finally, some animals offer direct defense. The relationship between certain ant species and their host trees is a perfect example of mutualism. The tree provides hollow chambers for the ants to live in, and in exchange, the ants act as a private security force, biting any herbivore that tries to eat the leaves and snipping away encroaching vines that might choke the tree. In Belize's broadleaf ecosystems, there is truly no such thing as a free lunch. Every creature pays its rent through these essential ecological services.